We are here with renowned author Dennis Griffin, formerly a policeman with 20 years as an investigator, a policeman in New York State. He has 10 books in print, 7 fiction and 3 nonfiction. Ladies and gentlemen, noted author Dennis Griffin.
Good morning.
What brings you in here today?
I came in to talk a little bit about the book House Party tonight.
Tell me, how did this book come about, Dennis?
A friend of mine played golf with a gentleman named Don Hill. And my friend called me one day and he said, this Don Hill guy I play golf with, he said he's an incredible person. He said he's, at the time, was 89 years old. And he said he's golf's his age and actually does a little hustling on the golf course. And he said he was a musician. And he played saxophone with a group called the Treniers. And they had one of the longest runs, continuous runs of any musical group. They played together for 55 years. And he said he's got a great story. He's looking for someone to help him write a book and asked if I would be interested. And I had never done an entertainment book before, but it had a lot of appeal to me. So I met with Don Hill and we agreed that we would do the book.
The Treniers. What kind of a group were they?
There was a black group, and they were called the Pioneers of Rock and Roll. They were in the same, they started in 1948, was when they were formed. Don Hill was a founding member. And the two of the other members, founders, were twins. They were Claude and Cliff Trenier. And Cliff's full name was Heathcliff. And in fact, according to Bill Cosby, the superstar entertainer, his character of Heathcliff Huxtable on his television show was based on Heathcliff Trenier. So they formed this group. It was an all-black group, and they started doing early rock and roll. And they were, like I say, they performed steadily for 55 years. They performed all over the world. They played before the Queen of England at the Palladium in England, the Brussels World's Fair, and coast to coast in the U.S., Puerto Rico, Mexico. Just an incredible, talented group of musicians.
They played in Las Vegas a lot?
Las Vegas was one of their prime venues. It was more or less their home base, and they played in when they first started playing back in the 48 and right through 2003. Initially, they had to deal with a lot of discrimination. For example, they had to be escorted into and out of the casinos here in Vegas by a white person. They couldn't come or go as they pleased without a white escort. But they survived all that, and at that time, the lounge acts were top quality entertainment. That has gone by the wayside in later years. But they had just some tremendous talent playing in the lounges. And then, of course, in the main showrooms. And the Treniers were part. They played with such people as Red Fox, Bobby Darin, Liberace, on and on, who they were with. And in fact, Don Hill, prior to co-founding the Treniers, had played with Louis Satchmo Armstrong's big band and Gerald Wilson. So he has tremendous credentials.
In Las Vegas at the Sahara Hotel, he appeared in lounges with the likes of Don Rickles, Louis Prima and the Witnesses, and one of the top acts in Las Vegas throughout the 60s.
That's absolutely correct. The Treniers were one of the most sought-after groups in Las Vegas and actually throughout the country. And they could really get an audience going. And they played multiple shows. They played sometimes all-nighters. That's when the lounge shows used to run all night. And they would play, and a lot of the big stars, for example, Bill Cosby, would do his show. And then when he got done, he'd come over and join the Treniers and appear on stage with them. And on one incident, when he showed up on the stage, he was kind of disguised. He was wearing a baseball cap, and he used the name of Eric Pomegranate Jones. That's how he was introduced to the audience, or how he introduced himself, but it was Cosby. And Elvis Presley He'd get done with his shows, he'd come to see the Treniers. Bobby Vinton. Bobby Vinton so enjoyed and was so impressed with Don's ability on the saxophone. And Bobby Vinton, who I had always thought of just as a singer, but he was a talented musician and played several instruments, including the sax. And what he did was he bought the Treniers albums and played them and trained himself to play exactly like Don Hill played the sax note for note.
Wow. So the Treniers were, besides being a great musical group, they were like a variety group. They did things that were on the par, I should say, on the par similar to Louis Prima, where it was a spectacular on-stage event. I mean, it really was there was things happening everywhere. There was music, and there was action, and dancing, and there was comedy, and there was singing, and good quality singing, that is. But most importantly, entertainment. People felt like it was a musical variety show.
Yes, the Treniers, they had the full gamut. And Don Hill, for example, would dance while playing the saxophone. And they were one of the only groups, if not the only group, that was allowed to drink while on duty, while performing. And Don told me that one time he and Gene Gilbo, who was the piano player, had a fifth of scotch between them. And the two of them drank the whole fifth of scotch in 2 songs. It was gone. And Don said some of the audience used to think it was phony, that they were drinking iced tea or something, but it was actually booze. And Don even had a straw. He had a flask in his jacket pocket, and he had a straw where he could nip on the booze while he was between blowing on the sax. So he had, and then do the dancing and the comedy, and like you said, a variety show. It was a great audience pleasers.
So they were kind of like a group similar to the Rat Pack. They would bring people out of the audience, and other performers would join them on stage and would perform after hours after their shows were finished.
Exactly. Yeah, a lot of the shows, now the Treniers, for example, might be playing, let's say, a midnight to 4 a.m. gig. When a lot of the other entertainers, the showroom headliners, such as Elvis, such as Cosby, or Bobby Vinton, Bobby Darin, when they got done with their gigs, which were usually earlier, they would be done, say, at 10:30, 11 o'clock, they would then go to the Treniers performances. And sometimes they just sit and listen. Other times they'd actually come up on the stage. Sometimes they do a number, depending on who the talent was. If they were a comedian, they might get up and tell some jokes. And I remember one time when they were in, I believe it was in New Jersey, and they were playing, I think, in Wildwood. And Frank Sinatra happened to be in the casino, and he knew the Treniers. He was a friend of theirs. And he came in while they were doing one of their lounge shows. And he got up on the stage, and the security guard got all flustered because the casino was emptying out and everybody was coming in the lounge and they were leaving the machines. So he told Skip Trenier, a nephew of the Trenier twins, he said, get this guy out of here. He said, the casino's emptying out. And Skip told me, he said, if you don't want Frank Sinatra on your stage, you tell him. So he said, the bottom line was the security guard left, Sinatra stayed.
So you said the Treniers worked 12 to 4 in the morning. So that was a bunch of sets and lounges, like 40 minutes on, 20 minutes off?
Correct.
And they worked as late as 6:30 to 7:30 in the morning in the Sahara days, didn't they?
Yeah, sometimes it wasn't all at midnight to 4, but they worked a lot of the overnight shifts. So yeah, the hours might vary according to different casinos, but they were on late generally. In fact, Bill Cosby, I did an interview with him for the book, and he said the Treniers, he said at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, he said, could still pump up an audience. He said, you got people that have been maybe partying or out all day. He said, and yet they'd be in a Treniers show at that time of the morning, and they'd be out in the aisles, the beat. He said it was all the beat. The beat was such you couldn't sit still when the Treniers were playing. You had to get up, you had to move, you had to dance. And he said it was just an incredible thing to see that at that time of the morning, they'd have all these people just almost in a frenzy, caught up with the beat of the music.
I saw them many times, and they went out of the room feeling great. I left the room in a great mood and happy, and it made my evening. That's the thing I got out of it, and just enjoyed them tremendously.
Well, that was the goal. Don Hill told me, he said, the goal of the Treniers was we wanted to make people feel good. He said, let them forget about whatever issues they had to deal with in their regular life for 2 or 3 hours or whatever. And we wanted them to enjoy themselves. And when they left the lounge that night or left the casino that night, they wanted them feeling good. He said that was the whole purpose, and that's what motivated the Treniers, is to make the audience feel good.
So what did you put in this great book, Denny? Tell us what we might expect to find.
Well, we started out, this is with Don Hill's life, where he was born, and a little bit of his background as a child, how we got into to music, how he was interested in music. And one thing most people don't know is Don Hill had a problem with stuttering. He stuttered so bad, in fact, that when he got drafted, he went to appear before an officer at a military base, and he couldn't talk. He stuttered so bad he couldn't talk, and the officer he was appearing before said, Mr. Hill, he said, he said, you had some college, he said, so you would have qualified for an officer slot in the Army. He said, but he said it would take you so long to get an order out. By the time you were able to do it, you and all your men would be dead. So he said, we can't use you. So Don was not accepted in the draft. But and then we go through his Don's days with various bands, including when he had his own band for a while in Los Angeles, and through Wilson and Satchmo Armstrong, and then forming the Treniers, and we break it down by decade. Again, these guys played together for over 50 years, and the rise, and then eventually as they got older and some of the members begin to die off, what happened, and also it's about how Vegas changed, and how where the lounge shows used to be a main staple in Las Vegas with quality entertainment, how all that went down when the corporations took over the casinos and so forth. So it's a history not only of Don Hill and the Treniers, but also to some degree of entertainment, and of course black entertainment.
So where can you buy this book?
You can buy it in multiple places. First of all, Houdini Publishing website would have it. It's also on eBay and on Amazon. So you can buy it if you've got whatever your preference is. If you're an eBay buyer, you can get it there. You can get it through Amazon or directly from the publisher's website. Don Hill is just turned 91. In fact, the book came out virtually on his 91st birthday. And he claims he's going to go to 100. And he still plays. That's really the incredible thing. He not only plays golf and shoots his age, but he still plays with a group called the Speakeasy Swingers. And they do, in fact, about 10 days ago, he was at the House of Blues at Mandalay Bay, in Las Vegas, with that Speakeasy Swingers. And Jeannie Bry, also known as Jazz and Jeannie Bry, helped me with the book and is a co-author of the book. And when the Treniers folded in 2003, she got Don to help her with the Speakeasy Swingers, and he's also one of the initial members of the Speakeasy Swingers. And it's really fun to go to their gigs and see how the crowd reacts when Don plays, and he plays a solo, and it's I never heard him play back in the 40s or 50s, but still sweet. That sax of his is still very sweet.
Did you have fun doing it?
Yes, I got to meet a lot of people. For example, I didn't meet in person, but got to talk to Bill Cosby, and I remember kind of funny. I've been trying to set up an interview, a phone interview with Mr. Cosby for quite some time, and we finally got a date picked. I called his office and got in touch with him, and somehow or other we got disconnected after about 10 minutes. And when I hung the phone up, I'm thinking, well, he must have been, I know he's a busy guy and so forth, and I appreciated the 10 minutes or whatever it was anyway. About 5 minutes later, the phone rang, and my wife answered it, and all of a sudden she had the Don Hill problem. She stuttered. She couldn't talk, and I said, what's the matter? He said, it's Bill Cosby. It's Bill Cosby on the line. So he had called me back, and we talked probably another 25 minutes. He was a real Treniers fan. Not many people get the opportunity to talk to somebody like Mr. Cosby. I also met Mel Tillis, the famous country western star, through Don. And Bobby Benton. Got to speak to Bobby Benton.
Bobby was also a stutterer.
Oh, yeah, and he still does. He doesn't do it when he sings, but when he's not singing, he tends to stutter on occasion.
Did Don and him ever discuss that?
I'm sure they did. Not in front of me, but I'm sure they did, because it's something they had in common.
Thank you for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, Dennis Griffin.